Well, to Ripcaster, my name's John Nelson and we're a Linn dealer based between Reading and Oxford in the UK. In today's video we're going to be building a very special turntable, the Linn LP12-50. This was a design collaboration between Linn and Johnny Ives to celebrate 50 years of Linn products. There is a very good video produced by Linn that talks about the origins and the collaboration that went into this turntable. I'll put a link in the description below. What we're going to do, we're going to go through the components that we've got and then we'll do the complete build in stages. So we receive the components partially assembled in these 5-6 boxes in front of me. We do the final assembly before onward delivery to the customer. There's only 250 of these are going to be made. We've done a number of these so far. First of all, let's have a look what we've got in each of the boxes. This white box is a presentation box with the LP12-50 with its main mechanics in it. And then in the other boxes we've got a Radikal power supply. We've got an Ekstatik cartridge in here. We've got an Ekso SE tonearm in here. We've got the special Keel 50 subchassis in here. And we've got a Urika II 50 in here. So let's just have a look what's in the main LP12-50 mechanics. In the top we've got the actual mat in a nice album sleeve. We've got the lid. So we've got the inner platter. We've got the carousel bearing. We've got the first of the unique design features, which has the hinges for the back panel, and we'll look at that in a bit more detail later. And we've got all the other fixings necessary for us to build the turntable, suspension parts, etc. And we'll cover those off in detail. There's also a wiring strap, but we don't actually need that. And inside the box now we are left with the kind of the core component, which is the Bedrok Plinth. And this is the component which gives the LP12-50 its outstanding performance. So I've laid out all the components on the table in front of me. Let's have a look what we've got in a little bit more detail. So I've got the actual lid. We've got the lid here, and then below it we've got the assembly components, things like suspension components and bushes, earthing wires, oil for the bearing, etc. Next we've got the inner platter, the carousel bearing and the hinges for the cover. Then we've got our first look at the actual Bedrok Plinth, partially assembled with the rounded corners and with the rounded speed control button. And you can see some of the internals of the plinth here. And finally we've got the outer platter and the drive belt. Okay, so I've put everything to one side now. I'm going to start by fitting the Ekstatik cartridge to the Ekso SE tonearm. So I've now mounted the cartridge on the tonearm. It's quite simple, just the leads and then the 3-point connection means the geometry is already set for you, so it's a very simple process. So the next thing we're going to look at is the keel. This is specifically designed for the LP12-50. We've got these curves on the arm board here. And unlike the LP12 keel, the standard one, which has got square corners, this arm collar here is actually a separate component which is bolted on, which gives us these very sharp lines here as it's fixed in, and that's held in with these 4 set screws. On the standard keel, this is all machined into the one plate and has got radiuses on the arm collar holder. So what we need to do is fit the carousel bearing into the centre of the Keel subchassis. This is a two-part component, so we just unscrew the locking nut off the carousel bearing eventually, and these, you can see 3 lugs around the outside there, and they locate on these lugs here. That semi-locks it in place. We then put the lock nut on, take the dust cap off and torque it to the required setting. Okay, so that is my LP12-50 subchassis ready to go. We'll put that on one side and we'll continue with the rest of the build. Next we're going to be moving on to the actual deck itself assembly. So I've got the Bedrok Plinth and top plate. It's quite a bit heavier because of the density of this bedrock material than the standard plinths, and obviously we've got the circular speed control button. But we're going to flip this over and put it in our jig and start the build. So we've got the LP12-50 in our jig. It's upside down now. You can see here the slightly different switch assembly than you would normally see on an LP12. And you can see how this material has been kind of machined in a similar way to you would aluminium billet. The other difference is that, again, because of the density of the material, all the holes here, instead of using wood screws as we'd use on a conventional plinth, we're going to be using kind of pre-threaded screws that we'd use in metal assembly. The first thing I'm going to do is fit the motor, which sits in here. So this comes part of the Radikal kit. So here I have the motor. And that is going to fit in here like so. But we'll just fit the motor now. All I'm going to do initially is just feed that through and tighten the set screw from below by hand. And I'll then do the other side. Dead easy, especially with gloves on. So I've secured the motor with the 2 set screws. And now I need to dress the cables. So this cable here is used to go to the power switch, and this cable here is for the tachometer, and that is fed through these 2 holes in the top plate here. It gets plugged into the power switch here, and we just tuck this in here just so it's nice and tucked out of the way, and we'll dress the cables here. The cables don't come out the back of the there isn't a cutout in the back of the Bedrok Plinth, it comes out through the base plate. I think what we'll do now is we will put the sub-chassis in, fit the sub-chassis to the body of the turntable, so I'm just going to thread this up through here, like so, and then rock it over these studs. And what we want to do now is to put the suspension components on each of these studs. And here are the suspension components that we're going to fit. So we've got an upper bush, the suspension spring, the lower bush, mudguard washer and a locking nut, and there's one of those that goes on each one. So we'll put the upper bushes on first. Like so. Got our upper bushes on, next goes the springs, and next the lower suspension bush, mudguard washer and a retaining nut, and it's these nuts that we will ultimately adjust to get the suspension balanced and tuned. But at this point all we're interested in doing is getting the basic components on the deck. Our sub-chassis installed, these, like I say, we'll adjust when we turn the deck up the other way and load it with all the equipment. Now normally in LP12 we would have a wiring strap that goes across here like so. Allows us to clamp cables, mount the lingo, various other components on here, and also it provides rigidity in the turntable base. But on the LP12-50, this material is so rigid, we don't need it, and so all that we need to do is fit mudguard washers on each of these, here and here, and a suitable locking nut, which we will tighten up in a second. These up. What we do want to do is to put an earthing strap, so we'll put an earthing strap from here to here. Just fix this earthing strap here, like so. And I'm just going to dress this cable so it's not going to interfere with the Urika, which is going to sit here. But we'll come back and just make sure that's all good when we've got the turntable the right way up. So essentially that is as much as we can do on the base for now. What we're going to do now is flip the turntable the other way up, and then we'll work on the surface. We'll fit the tachometer and then we'll work on the rest. So it's now quite heavy. Okay, so we have got all the components, and as you can see we've got some movement in the sub-chassis with the components in, and as you can see we've got these two wires here ready for the tachometer. Tachometer is going to sit on here like so. So let's fit that next. So it's 2 screws, 1, 2. So that's the tachometer in secured, and what we want to do is to fix these 2 wires into the tachometer itself. There's a red and a blue, so we'll just attach those in there. At this point the microphone failed, so I'll just narrate over this section until we fix that. And so what we're going to do now is take the dust cap off, and we're going to fill the bearing with oil. And here we've got the inner platter and the single point bearing you can see which fits in the top of the carousel bearing. So I'm just going to gently lower that into the bearing, give it a spin as it settles into the carousel bearing. And we can also fit the belt, so we'll put that around the outside of the inner platter and over the motor pulley. And we can give that a quick 360 just to get everything even. And as you can see, the arm board is starting to become slightly lower. So what we'll do now is load up the rest of the components on the top of the deck, starting with the Ekos tonearm. And we're just interested in loading the deck at this point, so we're adding weight into it. And what we're going to do is now adjust the suspension springs using this ratchet. You can see the underneath view there. And as we adjust these nuts, you can see the arm board raising in the actual plinth itself. We're just interested in getting the geometry right at this point, and we'll continue to load components on the top of the deck before we fine-tune this. So we're just looking at the lines and leveling it against the edges of the plinth. And we're just happy now, check all those sight lines, check the levels, and we're good enough to go. Next we'll add the outer platter, but first we need to add a timing mark. This is a little piece of black non-reflective material that goes on the inner side of the platter, which is then used as it goes past the tachometer there, used to constantly adjust and monitor the speed. And again, when we put this on, you will see the arm board is depressed again as we've added more weight. And so again, we will adjust the suspension. We've made sure the deck is already level in the actual jig at this point. So we're now getting into the fine tuning, and what we're looking for is to get a nice, even, linear bounce. This does take quite some time to get right. Alright, so we've let the turntable settle for a little while and readjusted it again. So I'm happy now both with the bounce and with the geometry. So that's kind of the top of the deck done right now. So that all that remains for us to do is to fit the Urika Phono stage in the base. But let's have a look at the Urika Phono stage. So this is the Urika II Phono stage for the 50th anniversary. Slightly different than the Climax LP12. Mechanically, it's got rounded corners, and the holes are countersunk so that it can take machine screws rather than wood screws. This is the exact version, so we've got two exact ports here. So we'll be connecting a power cable, the power supply for this, to the external Radikal, Ethernet cable to one of these exact inputs so we can feed that into the rest of the system. So I've got the Urika on the table in front of me. And along with the Urika, you get the following items in the kit. You get some anti-vibration tape, which goes around the edge of the Urika baseboard. Got some cable ties to secure the cables, washer and nut for the earthing cable, and the screws for securing it in the base, and these two retaining O-rings which just stop the centre screws from falling out whilst we're fitting it. And we've also got the power cable that goes to the Radikal power supply. So as you can see, we've now got the anti-vibration strips all the way around, just so that when that's clamped up in the base of the turntable, this isn't going to resonate against the base of the plinth. So next thing I'm going to do is fit the cables. So the first one is the power supply, which goes to the Radikal external power supply, and that clips in here. And the next one will be the exact link cable, which is a standard RJE cable. And we're going to dress these cables, so I'm going to put the Radikal power supply like so, and we've got some tie wraps to hold this in place. And the data cable we shall do like so. Just trim off the excess. A bag of screws here that go in each of these holes, but these centre two use a little O-ring on the inside, so that goes through there. So what we'll get now, we'll put this under the deck and fit it to the deck. Now we use a scissor lift to do this, so we can got more hands free. The first thing I'm going to do is connect this earthing strap onto this stud here. I'm just going to put a few coils in this, so as this goes upwards it concertinas down in here. Next thing I'm going to do is put this in the base of the tone arm, but what we want now is to reduce the height of this, so I'll just increase the height of our lift, and again there's a bit of a twist in this so that it will nicely lie when this is all tucked up in here. And we've got an Allen key here that we just need to tighten up. So I've added a little bit of light here, but you can see here we've got the signal cable going in the bottom of the tone arm, and there's a grub screw there that we're just going to tighten up with this Allen key. So now all that we need to do is route these cables out in the slot at the back here, and I will gradually bring the turntable and check that nothing is trapped. I'll then tighten up these screws, the centre ones. So we've tightened up all the baseboard screws, so we can now remove our lift. Alright, so the build of the LP12 now is essentially finished. So what we'll do now is take it out of the jig, we'll connect it up to the Radikal power supply, and we'll test it here, set up the tracking, etc. Before we then transport it to the customer and set it up in their home and just recalibrate it again in situ. Okay, so that's it for this LP12-50 build video. Hope you liked it. Please check out our YouTube channel for other videos that you might find interesting. And of course, you're always welcome to come and visit Ripcaster to see and hear these products for yourself. Thanks for watching.